go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. This is the Best Start Central Long Beach Network Building Grant RFP information session. And I am Christina Hall, the program manager for Best Start at the nonprofit partnership. I am responsible for Best Start Central Long Beach and Best Start Wilmington, which are our region's two Best Start communities. I'm joined here today by David McGill, who is the program coordinator at the nonprofit partnership working on Best Start. He's here for tech support today. And I am also here with Ravi Ahmad from Long Beach Forward, who is the director of, I'm going to get it wrong, I always do, director of children and families at Long Beach Forward. Oh, awesome. And she is responsible for the Best Start initiative as well. So she is here to talk about the community change priorities that we're going to talk about in just a second. But we appreciate you all being here today. If you want to go ahead and type your name in the chat, put your contact information, your social media to share with everyone else that's on here today, please feel free to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the application. And I can go through it a little bit with you today. So like I said, we actually have two communities for Best Start. One is Best Start Central Long Beach and one is Best Start Wilmington. And today we're talking about Best Start Central Long Beach's Network Building Grant Program. Wilmington's Network Building Grant Program will come out very shortly, and we'll have a different information session for that, but it's almost the same information. But Best Start is an initiative of First 5 Los Angeles. There are actually 14 Best Start communities in all of Los Angeles County. And First 5 LA's priority is to work with children age 0 to 5 and their families, also with a focus on prenatal services.
Premaduro y también con las políticas.
And Best Start directly works on working to strengthen collective will and impact of communities and organizations on systems change, but it is directed by community members. So there is a Best Start community partnership for each of those 14 communities. And we have a partnership here in Central Long Beach, as well as a Best Start leadership team made up of mostly community members as leaders and a few organizational members as well. And so we are very excited to have this network building grant to help continue to build the Best Start network of organizations that are there to support community members in the work that they are doing. Each Best Start community has what's called a community change agenda, and this agenda is made up of the priority areas that those community partnerships and community leadership teams have come up with as the priority. And Ravi's going to share more information on Central Long Beach's priorities with you today.
Thanks, Christina. Hey, everybody. So as Christina said, I'm the program director at LBF for children and families, and Best Start is one of our main projects. It's really good to see everyone. So our main priorities, as Christina said, these are sort of foundational to our work. Our community members came up with this a couple of years ago when we had sort of this restart of Best Start. So the Central Long Beach priorities are 4 of them. The first is building community knowledge on child development and parenting skills. The second is preventing child abuse and neglect. The third is increased access to quality and affordable childcare. The fourth is increasing access to quality and affordable housing and economic security. And I think, you know, for the folks on this call, we're all pretty aware that these intersect, right? And child abuse, for instance, child neglect has a lot of drivers to it. There's a skill aspect, There's also just recognizing how kids develop over time. There's the need for stable housing, for stable work. There are a lot of things that factor into that. So, you know, when you're thinking about the work that you do and how it could intersect with what Best Start does, really thinking about, again, that the way these goals interact, as well as the systems change and resident engagement sort of ethos that we're really trying to embody here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ravi. I'm going to go through a couple more areas of the application, and then we'll go ahead and stop the share and open it up for questions. All of these network building projects, the applications need to tie into those community change agenda priorities. But we're also looking for, like I said, organizations to help build out the network. And so as we go through the questions, you'll see kind of the different ways that that plays a role in this narrative that we're asking you to put together. The projects that we will be funding are between $10,000 and $25,000. If you have a project that's under $10,000, you know, feel free to submit it, but we've found that this is typically the range of the applications that have come in. Applications are due back to us at TNP on April 12th at noon. Grant decisions will be made in early May. And with that, we will begin a contracting and grant agreement process with the funded organizations. You will be informed either way, whether your grant is approved or declined. We are looking for organizations that, you know, have identified these community change priority areas, but we are looking for organizations that can help grow the partnership and work with community members in an authentic way. And so I'm going to skip the proposal cover sheet for a minute and jump down to the narrative questions. But we're asking you to not only tell us how your project addresses community change priority areas, but we also want to know, you know, how your organization is participating in Best Start currently, how your organization engages with community members. Are they part of your program planning process? Do you have an advisory board? Are they part of your board of directors? We also want to know how your organization can provide or does provide capacity building opportunities to community members. We want to know, you know, your program's goals, your objectives, the measurable outcomes. Those are, you know, typical things within your grant proposals. But we also want to know how you're evaluating success around, you know, those measurable goals and outcomes, but also in general, because we know that we may have a goal such as changing a city ordinance, but maybe that, you know, we don't change that city ordinance, but there are successes along that path to that process. So, you know, how do you evaluate success, you know, from a qualitative and quantitative perspective in your organization? Also knowing any long-term plans your organization has for funding, because as we are trying to build out the Best Start network, we are also trying to increase the number of funders that can come in and help support funding the network, because we know that we want to have a more sustainable funding pool for Best Start activities. And we know that we want the Best Start initiative to become its own, you know, self-supported organizational, you know, coalition or whatever it ends up becoming. We want it to be an independent entity. And so we're looking at that as well. We are asking for a couple of attachments to your narrative. That would be your organization's current budget and your most recent 990. And the narrative can be up to 5 pages. And then those attachments are extra. And we're also asking for this proposal cover sheet. The proposal cover sheet can be pulled out of the PDF, and it's a fillable form. Or if you want to just copy and paste this page into a Word document, that's fine too. We just want to have all of this proposal cover or proposal information as a basic cover sheet. So we have the same thing that we're looking at for each organization. So let me stop sharing for a second so I can see you all. And I'm already seeing a question in the chat. And now I'm going to go ahead and open it up for other questions. Let me answer this one first. Can you give an example of what you mean by capacity building for community members? So maybe your organization has a leadership development program for community members. That would be a great example of a capacity building opportunity for community members. Some organizations offer training sessions for community members on different things as well. Maybe it's not a whole leadership academy, but it's different kind of programming. We're trying to support our leaders, our community members into being leaders. And we want to support them in the work that they're doing, but we want to give them, any kinds of skills that they are looking for. So knowing what kind of capacity building your organization does helps us understand what's available for community members to participate in. Gina, I hope that answered your question. Awesome. Any other questions out there? I did
Hi,
mention, oh, go ahead, Alicia, and then I'll answer Glenda's question in the chat.
Okay, great. This is Alicia. How many grants do you have to opportunity to fund? How many organizations?
We are looking at probably a range of 5 to 10. It's going to depend on the numbers that come in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Glenda put in the chat, I heard you mention that the long-term goal is for Best Start to become independent. Do I have a timeline for this? First 5 LA has built a strategic plan that goes until 2028. And they would like to see all of the Best Start communities become more and more independent in the work that they are doing during the next 8-year period. I don't know if if they have a sooner timeline than that, but we do know that's what we're working towards in each Best Start community in LA County. If our fiscal sponsor doesn't file 990s, what can we provide instead? Go ahead and reach out to David and I. You can reach both of us together at one email address. It is support@tnpsocal.org. I'm putting it into the chat right now. It's also on the application. We can talk to you separately to figure it out. But if you have, your organizational budget, we can probably work through that and just have you submit your tax ID information through the fiscal sponsor. And maybe we might need your MOU with your fiscal sponsor as well. But go ahead and give David and I an email and we can discuss that.
And to that point, if our organization is not a nonprofit, so our budget is sufficient.
Are you an organization that can make contracts with other groups?
That can do what? I'm sorry.
To sign contracts, like we can't fund individuals, but we can work with other
we're an LLC. We're an LLC. Yes. We're just not a nonprofit. So that's why when I see 990, that's where my mind goes. So that's why I'm just confirming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mostly we get nonprofits that apply for these grants, but we can definitely take your organization's financials.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go. We don't really have a set number of families that we hope grantees serve. We want to know more about your process and who you are serving and look at it holistically. Because this organizational grant process is to help build the network out. We're looking at lots of different factors with these grants. And in fact, one of the things I didn't mention is like the next steps. So when you apply for the grant, you're going to send your grant application materials to David and I at TNP. What we're going to do, we're going to build a summary. We're going to go through your grant to see if there's any questions we have about your grant application and documents. And then we actually get the summary that we've created and your documentation all translated. And then we submit, the English, the Spanish, and the Khmer versions of these grants to Long Beach Forward to review with the leadership team. And the leadership team is the one body that makes the final determinations. Then they send that list back to us at TNP, and then we will enter into the contracts with you. And then we will go through the grant agreement process and contracting process with you. I see a question in the chat from Laura. Is this grant open to new organizations that haven't worked with Best Start before? Absolutely. If you haven't worked with Best Start, there's a question that's asking, how you do work with Best Start. Let us know how you would like to work with Best Start. How do you intend to work with Best Start? What are your hopes and dreams on that front? Lots of great questions. Thank you, everyone. Are there any other questions out there? I see Neil's hand up.
I'm always the first with questions.
There you go.
So many of us here are actively involved at this moment in the Best Start PBI, Participatory Budgeting Initiative process. How do these initiatives intersect? Do they have to be distinct work programs? I wondered if you and Ravi could talk about that.
Yeah, so I don't know, Ravi, do you want to start first or you want me to take it first?
Sure, I can give some basic background. I mean, they have slightly different focuses, right? So it's not out of the question for them to intersect by any means, and that's happened before, last year, for instance. But the participatory budgeting process is really about community-driven projects. So they design them, they write the budgets, they present them to the community, that sort of thing. Or agencies are invited to participate, right, to be part of that process, but it's really more of a community-driven process, and it's very much grounded in sort of the express needs in the idea collection process. It's very, it's a community-driven process from soup to nuts. The network funding is a little bit more focused on the organizations in the Best Start network, their needs for growth, for sustainability, all of those kinds of things. So yes, absolutely, but they have slightly different focuses.
Yeah, and one of the other things I should mention is that we have a learning community set up for the organizations that participate in projects within Central Long Beach, and another one for Wilmington. And we have asked both the participants of the participatory budgeting process, the existing PB projects, and the existing network building project grantees participate together. So we definitely try to keep that intersection alive. Did that answer your question, Neil?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question, but I want another question, but I want other people to step in with their questions before I come up with my second question.
Okay. I say go for it, Neil.
Okay. Yeah, I want to understand better the Central Long Beach focus because a lot of the work that we do is citywide policy work, but you want to see under our grant proposal a real engagement from residents in Central Long Beach. If we kind of combine a systems change framework with engagement in Central Long Beach, is that the kind of thing that you think is appropriate? Because we don't do Central Long Beach policy, of course.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And we are all aware that there are certain things that, definitely, are, ordinances are city focused, and that, if you can show how you're going to specifically interact with community members in Central Long Beach, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Devin.
Thank you, Neil, for asking that question. I kind of have something that's related. So I'm with Project Childhood Long Beach, and our focus is on changing the way that Child Protective Services operates with our families in Central Long Beach. So that means that we're interested in the child protection of preventing child abuse and neglect, but I can see how there's overlap with the parenting practices and education on child development. And we also do positive parenting as one of our trainings. So we were thinking of specifically applying for the child abuse and neglect, but there's clearly going to be overlap. So do you recommend that we indicate both priorities on the application, or?
I would absolutely do that and talk about those, how your program is, intersectional in that way. And those are definitely, we know that many of these priority areas in all of the 14 communities are so intersectional. And if you can, work on one, you're inadvertently working on another or more than one, right? But if you specifically have a program that can work on multiple priority areas and you can talk about that intersectionality, I would go for it.
Great, thank you. And one last question. In the priority for the child development, there's some language in there that talks about increasing community awareness. So that can go for both the community members and then also the organizations that are operating in that community. So if we include things like training and collaborative support with individual organizations that are members in the Central Long Beach community, that would also be appropriate for this, just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi guys, this is Nick with the Mayor's Fund for Education. I guess to daisy chain this with another follow-up, would it be appropriate if we have two programs that sort of fall under separate priority areas to submit two applications for separate programs?
Yes, if you have separate programs, I would submit separate applications.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? You all have made this so easy. Well, I will stay on if anyone wants to ask any questions privately or just, keep throwing them at us. But, that's basically it. We want you to take a look at the application. We'll need that cover sheet. The grant narrative is, 5 pages maximum. We'll need your 990 and your budget. If you have any questions that come up, please email. You can email David and I directly with one email address. It is support@tnpsocal.org. It's in the application, and now it's also in the chat.